Hello, Snacks, welcome back. Good to see you all again. Thank you as well for all the little bits of advice you gave in the last video regarding the cat issue. Speaking of the pedantic pooper, here he is! Yeah, it's nice to know we're not dealing with a unique situation. Turns out everyone's cats are a piece of shit. The stories collected today, I could only think of a theme name of Batshit Insane. However, the first story ended up taking way longer than I thought to read, so we're just going to split them up into two videos this time around. But before we get into them, we've got to give an update to a story that left us with many theories. Wasn't too long ago we came across it. It was the issue where OP thinks their husband's mistress thinks he is richer than he actually is, and her best friend thinks that OP is a D-bag because she's purposely keeping silent about it. To summarize the original story, OP and her husband, not technically married but happily together for over 14 years, he decides he wants to have a bit more of an open relationship lifestyle, but unfortunately her love for him vanished the moment he confessed he was in love with another woman. Of course, the husband didn't want to separate though and still wanted things to be together, and OP was like, okay, sure. Unfortunately, OP becoming indifferent about the whole situation and now admitting to herself she's no longer in love with him, well, the husband didn't like that and he had been sulking ever since. So with realizing he needs to amend his current relationship if he ever wants any hope of keeping it together, well, he decides to bring his mistress over to their house. How convenient that he did so when he thought OP wouldn't be home. Now, at the time, OP was immediately snappy, telling her to get out, otherwise she'd call the police, to which the mistress then replied or gossiped to the husband, asking when the hell she was going to be getting kicked out already, because, oh, what a surprise, the husband had created a lie to the mistress here that he was the one who owned this place himself, when in reality, he doesn't own Schmidt, and technically when it comes to their beach houses and all that kind of stuff, well, that's actually OP's own family who owns all that stuff as well. So with OP overhearing that little gossip of the mistress, she decides to tell her best friend all about it and is laughing at what is going to be an eventual revelation for the husband to have to deal with. But OP's best friend is not very, happy about this, calling her a horrible person for knowing that this woman is basically being lied to and led along on a facade, and it kind of left us all wondering, well, is OP okay to admit the information that this woman is about to get wed and, locked in with someone who is kind of committing fraud, or is she right to be this petty and hostile to a woman who, again, the only interaction was that one moment in the kitchen together? Now, at the time, OP made many comments into the comment section, truly believing that he had already been cheating all this time and was just trying to create an open relationship dynamic to hopefully excuse any need to confess that sort of thing. That they've had a very passionate, at least on her part, loving relationship with lots of intimacy, so it's kind of weird he's done this. If it brings those who hate cheaters any peace of mind, all this time this fellow was being all sad and crying all the time as well. So yeah, man really just shot himself in the foot with this entire situation. But of course, this caused many to question as well, why is the mistress getting so much support from your very own friend? Well, this made OP skeptical herself. In many other comments, she brought up some of her theories on the history of her best friend's relationship with her new husband, and oh boy, it led many of us to realize that, maybe this friend has a bit of a projection going on about the mistress here, and wouldn't you know it, many of you definitely theorized it when we last read the story, but oh, the update. I had a showdown with my former best friend. I did it. I had a showdown with my former best friend via text, and I confronted her about her non-existent support when I went to her with my woes. I told her that she concentrated on the wrong issue. She should have been my shoulder to cry on. She should have shown up with wine, ice cream, and a shovel, but instead, she called me a bigger dish than my husband. She tried to gaslight me, and I realized that she's always been a good gaslighter, so I interrupted her before she made me out to be the villain. I asked her bluntly, was her husband's name married when you started sleeping together? When you told us that he was married before, we all knew that, but we were all under the impression that he was married and divorced before you two met. But was he still married? Is that why you related to the mistress and felt sympathy for her? Because you were her? She didn't answer me until the next day to call me a bitter and jealous bitch. Wow. Yeah, I can't find the original comment right now, but in the original post, OP commented that basically her friend had a similar sort of, experience or treatment to when she met her now husband. Being assured and love-bombed with all this fancy gear and such, but then when they got married, suddenly she's having to budget things and isn't getting the princess treatment that she was so assured of when she was dating at the time. Which makes sense then why the best friend has become so defensive defensive of the mistress because, yeah. So this was the last one-on-one interaction with her, I have decided. She's been my friend since preschool, but now we need to go our separate ways, not only to save us from future hurt, but also to save our memories together from hurt. I talked to my husband too and asked him to not make the separation difficult and bitter, that it ruins all the happiness we felt being together because we cannot think back on 1/3 of our lives with resentment. I asked him to take my dad's offer. He offered to help him find a lease on an apartment and pay half a year's rent if he moved out without giving me problems. When I got home, he and his clothes were gone. He left an apology letter saying that he will always love me and never meant to hurt me.
My dearest OP, my dearest love, please understand. She wanted to touch my willy. I couldn't say no.
So I have finally been able to cry my eyes out, and it felt so good. I have been crying since I got home. I lost 2 of my closest people, but this is what happens when we hit hardships. We see people's true faces. And yeah, basically ends there. So there's the closure, folks. All of you were right in the comments, and I had the most asinine take at the time. That'll teach me to pity people and consider other sides of things. No, but seriously, I love you all. So this next story was compiled just 2 days ago and began in r/German. It's been roughly translated, so there might be some mistranslations and weird understandings here, but don't worry, you can follow along. It began in October, titled The House of the Crazy. I need help. I'm totally lost here. I'm reaching out here on a throwaway account because I'd like to do this anonymously. I, 27, live with my sister, 33, and my younger brother, 24, in my mother's house. My mother lives farther away, together with her boyfriend. I live with my brother on the upper floor. My sister lives alone on the lower floor. My sister couldn't handle my parents' divorce about 12 years ago. Lots of psychological terror. A crazy father who threatened to decapitate my mother, who used to assault my mother often back then. The list goes on. There's a theory that we still see as the main culprit for the actual problem to this day. During her school days at the vocational school, my sister met a new friend. More and more often, her friend came to us. And then it turned out that the father of said new friend was apparently my mother's first boyfriend back then, around 18 or 19 years old. As a result, mother and the old first boyfriend met again, something was going on, and my mother felt safe again. My father noticed it, and from then on the drama started. A lot of chaos, horror, leading to divorce. From that time on, my sister became quieter, more distant, hardly went out anymore, probably because she felt guilty. Friends were lost, acquaintances, but she didn't care. She didn't want help. No psychologist, absolutely nothing. It all went, well, for years. She lived her life on the lower floor, full of silence, loneliness, just with a TV and a laptop. During that time, however, she still went completely crazy. She started smashing stove plates here and there. Something always broke. She slammed doors. She really started behaving like a gorilla. Really like an animal, but only when no one was with her. When you're downstairs in her apartment, she's just quiet, and she walks away if you're there too long. She doesn't talk, says nothing, nods at most, or says yes or no at best. She walks around like a ninja with a masked face in black clothes. Completely crazy. Yet she can write shopping lists, cook, clean, everything. She's theoretically completely normal, but also completely crazy. This went on for years and years. She was still human, but didn't go out anymore, and hasn't set foot outside for over 10 years. She has a caregiver who only comes rarely, rejects any psychological help, and gets some form of welfare and disability benefits. She doesn't have an ID because she doesn't allow pictures to be taken. It's just all chaotic and hard to explain. But now let's talk about the last 3 to 4 months. It's getting crazier and crazier with all of this, and I'm suffering from it daily now. She's gone completely mad. Really, consistently creepy. She started talking to herself in a creepy witch-like voice, like a grandma somehow. Very strange emphasis, light, but in the first few weeks, still quite quiet. You could hear it occasionally in the stairwell, but as soon as you enter her apartment, it's quiet. Then she just stands there, cleaning or tidying up or making food, as if nothing. As soon as you leave her apartment, it starts again. This loud talking, constantly to herself, and that has intensified by now to outright madness. She screams like a monkey, really like a monkey, no joke, almost like barking. She throws chairs through the apartment, glasses, cups, hits walls, runs through the apartment as if she's a wild animal gone mad and being chased. She talks louder and louder, sometimes screams so loud you can hear it outside. She does this for hours every day. I hear it upstairs in the apartment. I can't find peace once I'm home because my gut feeling tells me that at some point she'll break the door with a knife and stab everyone or set the house on fire or something. I hardly see her as a human anymore, simply because it's impossible to interact with her. If I do something wrong downstairs, look in the wrong shelf in the kitchen, she comes running, asks, "What are you doing there?" and then smashes half the apartment in the end. She cleans it up, of course, but I can't help because she'll freak out again. Here's some audio links to an audio recording. This is everyday life. This is what I have to endure, listen to, cope with for 10 hours every day. And yeah, we're just gonna play these out for you. So yeah, maybe over the span of a day you might find it a bit weird. Doesn't sound too intense at first, but of course if you're experiencing that noise in your household for 10 hours, give or take, I'm sure that's just a rough outline. I can understand if you're really getting concerned about your siblings' mental health. I can't take this anymore. It's just burdening. I would rather call the police and have this beast forcibly restrained in a psychiatric ward. This is no longer my sister, as sad and terrible as it may sound. The problem is that I can't do any of that. If I set anything in motion here, my mother will catapult me out of the family because she's some crazy conspiracy theorist. She believes, in the psychiatric ward, she'll be locked up for profit. Something like that. Here's a quote from a WhatsApp from her. "Can't reach the caregiver. Send him a message. He'll call back. I think he also wants to avoid forced commitment. I would try to take her to a clinic next week, voluntarily. If she refuses, the caregiver will intervene and then it would only go through the judge. The bad thing about it is that we won't have any influence anymore. They can just lock her up for as long as it's profitable for an institution." She says all of this without ever realizing what my sister actually does down there. She doesn't live here anymore. She only comes by every few weeks for a day or two. During that time, my sister is quiet, fairly normal, simply because someone is downstairs. The problem is that these mental outbursts only intensify once my mother leaves again. When I'm downstairs, there's peace, but chaos reigns later. My mother sometimes doesn't even believe me. She just pretends. She tries to find excuses, this and that. "Oh, just talk to her. Maybe she has some problem. Are you sure she broke something?" Yada, yada, yada. Yes, she smashed the laptop in 2 halves. Yes, she broke a stoveplate. Where are all the cups? Oh yes, gone. Certainly not because she throws all the cups against the walls and makes monkey noises. She doesn't notice. And then I'm the stupid one. Of course, you could just say, just be there for her. But that doesn't help. She just walks away and locks herself in her room, starts hammering on walls, throwing wooden blocks around her room. Yeah, no joke, it sounds like a surreal goddamn horror movie. It doesn't help. She's just completely crazy. Really crazy. And my mother thinks she lacks something. I don't know what to do anymore. My brother doesn't really care much. He lives in his own world, which is fine for him. But I live right above the kitchen, where my sister screams almost 10 hours a day as if she's possessed by the spirit of the Millennium's monkey. I could move out, sure, but then my sister would be completely alone with my brother, and he doesn't care much because he hardly notices it since he lives on the other side of the house. So what should I do? I'm completely lost, speechless. I'm breaking down here. I feel like I'm in the house of the insane, as if it's Halloween every day, like a horror movie. I live here with a brother who doesn't care, a mother who's also crazy and afraid for her completely unhinged daughter, and a sister who behaves like a chimpanzee on amphetamines, completely out of control. So at this point, it seems OP is just desperate to get rid of their sister. As dark as it sounds, clearly they're in a situation where family can't help anymore. Not even probably voluntary therapy at this point. Now, there's a lot of back and forth opinions, some saying this is all OP's fault because their parents were incompetent. I don't know how you're coming to that conclusion. Okay, buddy, you deserve the -3. Others believe that it is also just pointless to do anything, even calling the police or trusting that she'll just voluntarily do stuff herself, which got OP in the comments again to add some extra details that's pretty important, letting us know where they're from, but also, I've now classified my sister's behavior as profound psychosis, probably with multiple personality disorders disorder or schizophrenia. Unfortunately, such conditions can be very dangerous when they escalate, and it has been escalating for several weeks now. I'm not sure if that's what it is, but I have many acquaintances with problems, and they confirm this behavior is quite typical, some with confirmed psychoses and schizophrenia, etc., for whom the clinic is like a second home. So voluntarily admitting her is out of the question. She runs away as soon as her supervisor arrives, which is the caregiver. Again, the mistranslation here. She locks herself in her room. Even when a psychologist came, she locked herself in. When friends came up through the stairwell to our place, she locked herself in. It's set up like a duplex, 2 floors with a stairwell. She covers laptop cameras, refuses to use a phone. She was gifted one, broke it and threw it away. Refuses to take ID photos for a new ID or health insurance card. And this is all managed by the caregiver, who has to confirm that this person somehow exists. I'm not sure of the details, but that's how I understood it. She occasionally watches TV in the living room downstairs, but not watching, just randomly switching channels until she loses interest. Every second, a new channel. Now, months ago, when the laptop was still intact, had to print something, I checked the browsing history. Hundreds of Wikipedia pages were opened, opening a new link every second. She doesn't read. She just clicks through everywhere for hours and then just walks away. I want to emphasize that she was last outside the house over 10 years ago. She doesn't know what's on the left or right side of the house now. I'm not exaggerating. It's really been that long. Her windows are taped up. Everything barricaded. In general, it should be noted that when she was still somewhat responsive, she said very strange things. She claimed that she is touched by ghosts in the basement, attacked by lightning, and the ghosts tell her that she will become a man. She also suffers from severe hair loss, has slight facial hair growth, so she constantly covers herself. She eats nothing we cook. She only accepts freshly bought groceries. Now, what we cook is poison for her because we are all supposedly witches trying to poison her. No joke, she really said that once. It only became dangerous once about 3 years ago. My mother was visiting, sleeping downstairs. The bedroom had a wooden door with a glass window in the middle. My sister went there at 2 a.m. and smashed the door with a hammer, then stood in the room. My mother woke me up through WhatsApp messages, telling me to come down because my sister was there with a hammer and had smashed the door. Now, due to a short circuit, I went down with a kitchen knife in my waistband, simply because my mother is more important to me than what my sister had become at that time. However, my sister apparently noticed me coming down the stairs and went back to her room. That was the only incident where it got really critical. Now, there haven't been any threats like stabbing or burning down the house. Those are just my fears. She doesn't threaten. She seems peaceful towards us, but peace disappears as soon as we leave the apartment downstairs. And then there's war down there. Seriously, it gets worse every day. Ending it with a thanks to everyone for everything, all the support really that they can give, no matter how nihilistic or accusatory it all was. But that's where things were left at the time. Not exactly the best conclusion and silence you'd want to experience from someone in this particular situation. But it wasn't until late February, just over 5 months later, that the OP returns with an update. Hey people, 4 months ago I completely freed myself from my problem with my sister here. Mentally ill, completely crazy, broke everything, screamed, it just kept getting worse and worse. And maybe there are 1 or 2 people who remember it and who are also interested in what has happened here recently. So little by little, more and more details came out. 1, my mother didn't tell the carer about my sister's behavior, so completely secret. The supervisor and psychologist knew nothing about my sister's highly aggressive behavior. The constant yelling, that was completely alien to them. Because why? Well, my sister completely pretended as soon as they were there. My mother was afraid of what might happen if it was mentioned, so I just did it now. I always told my mother how our sister was spinning the wheels here, but for her, it was also half-heartedly accepted. Or maybe she needs something, or maybe she hurt herself. Surreal. So yes, unsurprisingly, the mother who has a conspiracy theory that the mental health wards in Germany are just doing it for profit, and so naturally, she hides all her daughter's health issues from the, well, health experts. 2 weeks later, she was admitted with RTW, compulsory, including the public order office. No hassle, no chaos, but she was very tense, very stressed, and very anxious, running around in circles in a panic, but cooperated and came along straight away, albeit with a few attempts. It could have happened so quickly. But I didn't know that my mother always kept all the details quiet, and given the timing, I was never there for a conversation like that with them. I thought everything was familiar. The horror, this terrible notion in the house for 10 hours a day, the breaking, the screams, the extremely loud conversations with myself, none of this was ever mentioned. One phone call. That was all I needed to do. I stole my mother's carer's number when she came to visit us and she put her cell phone away for a moment. There was no other way. I called the next day. He was speechless, absolutely speechless. And then it happened quickly, very fast. This should have happened so much sooner. I blame my mother, but on the other hand, I can also understand her because she herself is a bit of a mess and thinks that my sister is becoming a profit machine and a guinea pig in the LWL. I think everyone here has a bit of a problem, but I'm glad I came out of it a bit normal. And now she's in the psychiatric hospital. Believe me, I'm so glad. For her and for us. I'm not afraid to come home anymore. I'm actually looking forward to it now. And her, well, not much is known yet. The first major diagnosis is that her brain has shrunk. For whatever reason. So now she's going to a specialized clinic. We visited her together once, otherwise only my mother, because my sister found out in the hospital that I had initiated all of this and, well, she really hates me for it. Nevertheless, I recently went along once. She stood there, hair 2 centimeters long, but very thin. Maybe thousands of hairs if you count them all on her head. No mask anymore. She always masked herself. Never walked around the house without a face mask and cap. Her skin was so clear. It was incredible. Like she's 15 instead of in her early 30s. No trace of beard growth. She was allowed to shave in the clinic, but somewhat thin, barely eating. I saw my sister without a mask for the first time in years. That was a strange feeling. And then she stood there and she started speaking, and I immediately got goosebumps. That creepy, disguised voice came back, and exactly the crazy things she used to scream downstairs, only in a normal volume, and I could finally understand it. Feel my head. Come on, feel it. It's burst. My head burst when I was in the ambulance. It really exploded. There are corners and edges everywhere in my head. Come, feel it. My mother came closer, touched her head, and said, "Yes, I think I feel something there." And then my sister jumped back and slammed her own head against the bathroom door 3 to 4 times extremely, really extremely, until the door shook. Then she came running back and said, come on, feel it again. Now you'll feel it." My mother was already anxiously coming to me, stood behind me, and looked at me questioningly. I shrugged. I know her behavior exactly like that. My mother never experienced it live. I endured it for months. And then my mother said, "Well, we better go then." My sister then screamed, "Yeah, get lost! Go on, get lost! Hello!" And we left. When the door was closed, various objects were thrown against the door. This was then reported to the supervisors there, and we went home. My mother was shocked, and I told her once again that I had endured this for 10 hours a day for months, and she finally saw what was really going on. There are also general statements that my sister made at the psychiatric hospital. She's being chased by a vampire, aliens want to steal her head because there's no metal in it, we all hate her and want to get rid of her. The list of strange statements is long. Okay, so far you think that's probably where things are going to wrap up. The craziness was that, yep, she's developed some huge psychosis over the span of years. Well, no, my friends. No. This is where the things are becoming the crazy. The caregiver then tasked us with opening her rooms downstairs, as an extreme mold, garbage, and dead smell was coming out. Here it is worth noting again, no one except her has entered these rooms in the last 12 years. We were not allowed to, so we went in there. The first 2 rooms were typical hoarder rooms, dirty, moldy, trash everywhere, all broken. The last room was so surreal that I can hardly describe it. She built herself a massive cage out of scrape wood, which she brought up from the basement at night. Soundproofed, completely nailed shut, firmly attached to the wall. No window, not your average cage like you know it, no, a massive mini bunker with locks, a gallows in the middle, open electrical cables that were stripped at the front, buckles attached to the floor. Believe me, absolutely crazy stuff. That can't be put into words. There are videos and pictures of all of this in case it's needed in the future, but I'd rather not post that, but it can be sent to a mod for verification so they believe it. While cleaning up, we also found 2 mummified cat corpses, hidden in wooden boxes and sealed with a layer of filler on top. These cats were wild village cats without owners who often overwintered in our basement and then disappeared again. There were not only 2 of them, there were many. So we don't know what happened there, and we don't want to know. Batteries wrapped in duct tape, a ceiling light that can only flicker, all walls painted black gothic style with strange texture, a self-made bed like from a science fiction alien movie, and masses of trash that we throw away. she sorted out at night and built strange things in this room. And that's all there is to it. 2 of the 3 rooms have been cleared out, mold is still being removed, everything is being renovated, remade, and everything old has long been thrown away. The 3rd room is still too weird for us, but the gross garbage has now been removed from there too, as it smelled incredibly bad. And that's where it ends, folks. OP offering to offer any other questions and answers to anything if need be, but at this point, I'm feeling pretty done. As insane and psychotic you got to comment the sister being here, there's also a lot of sympathy that's owed her way. I mean, this mother. Oh, imagine how much sooner this woman could have gotten help if the mother had just told and let the caregivers know about what was going on. I mean, this is the exact reason why OP hadn't brought this up in the first place. They genuinely just thought it wasn't necessary since the psychologist and supervisor or caregiver knew everything. I often asked my mother whether she would pass on the audio recordings, the stories, everything to the caregivers. And she said, "Oh yes, he knows about what she is doing there." And then I accepted it, unfortunately. Having the call was difficult. At first, the caregiver wanted to convey to me that he knew everything about it and that he couldn't do anything because she wasn't a danger to herself. But when I mentioned that she had blue swollen hands from whatever, like throwing chairs around the apartment, screamed so loudly that she almost vomited, smashed glasses 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, he suddenly became upset quiet and had to come to terms with it first. He didn't notice anything about it because he never saw the blue hands because she either hid them or locked herself in the room and then they talked to each other through the door. Which, like, again, if this issue had been brought up months, even years ago, maybe the sister could be recovering, like, by now. Maybe by now she would have been all good. Maybe not all good, but you know what I mean. At least in a whole better frame of mind than she is now, instead of letting it all just fester and bubble and boil within herself in her confined space. Also, just a fun confirmation that the mother is definitely just being conspiracy theory insane about Germany. So someone very well aware of the situation of it all. Since most German hospitals are not for profit, as the majority of the German healthcare system, that's really crazy talk. On the contrary, there will be numerous assessments by the MDK, caseworkers bugging doctors if treatments are really necessary, for cases that expensive. Also, frequent reviews by judges and whatnot, with others theorizing that the mother is a Querdenker, which I'm assuming, well, at least what they're comparing to is like QAnon in Germany. But yeah, what a shame. Being left to rot for 12 years. All because what seems to have been a trigger of her feeling like she was responsible for her family falling apart, which, ironically, in a way, no. She saved her family. She saved her mother. By exposing herself to her, like, first boyfriend from years ago, she was, like, reminded that she actually wasn't trapped with the abusive husband that she originally was with. She realized she actually had a choice. The husband clearly didn't appreciate that, and that caused the entire family to fall apart as a result. Oh man. I can only imagine how traumatic that whole experience was, where for basically saving your mother, you would develop schizophrenia and this entire psychotic just existence. Anyway, friends, might end that all there. Keep it as one story for today. For now, though, love your face. Thank you as always for watching. And you know what? Today was a bit of a tough, bit of a big one to swallow, so you don't need to drink water today. I'll let you pass this one time. Bye-bye.